I appreciate you guys coming. And for everybody who's joining online, I really appreciate you coming. This is the second in our leadership webinar series for SAME. Today, we're going to be joining with Dr. Mogge. He's a retired colonel in the United States Air Force. He was the previous president of SAME, and he has a distinction of being project manager on some very high profile projects, including the widening of the Panama Canal, as well as the reconstruction of the Tyndall Air Force Base following Hurricane Michael. That project was actually awarded some great distinctions, including becoming a model for an installation of the future. So he'll be sharing with us some of his leadership principles and some of his thoughts. So without any delay, Colonel Mogge, I'll go ahead and hand it over to you, sir.
It's a pleasure to be with everybody this afternoon, and a real honor to help you get this student chapter underway and provide a little content for the students and also the local post folks. So Steve and I think Sam, thanks for jumping in here. Of course, JR, you as well. So I'm kind of in a third career. I had 26 years with the United States Air Force, all of which was in the civil engineering career field. And then retired in 2001 and joined CH2M Hill, pretty well-known company there in California, which is now a wholly owned subsidiary of Jacobs Engineering, and retired from Jacobs in 2022. So I do my own little consulting activity today. Try to keep it part-time, so I have plenty of opportunity to help others, and that's what I'm about. If you would go to the next slide, I want to give you just a little bit of background, understanding that this is a new chapter and of the post there in the Fresno, Sacramento area. The origin and history of SAME, it was something that I thought might resonate a little bit to your students there, Mike. The society is over 100 years old. To our understanding, it's the oldest professional society in the United States. As the slide shows, it was founded at the end of World War I, when our country realized they couldn't get to Europe fast enough with the proper equipment and capabilities to really make a big difference in World War I. So Brigadier General Black was one of the Corps of Engineer leaders at the time, and he was really the founder of SAME. There's a link there at the bottom of this slide, and I think Mike's going to share those with everybody that will give you a lot more detail on the society's history itself. But it's a very proud, stowed kind of organization. And regardless of what your discipline is or your interest is, understanding that many of you are former vets or veterans, I should say, or have served, I would encourage you all to make SAME a part of your professional activities now and continuing into the future. I've been a member since I was a second lieutenant, so a long time ago. And I can speak first from a firsthand perspective that there's always been great value in SAME and my engagement over the years in all different types of positions. So what about you guys? Let's go to the next slide, if you would, Mike. So coming out of the military, and I don't know how many of you in the audience do have military background, but I just wanted to compare and contrast sort of the path forward here for you. So, coming out of the military, you are very mission focused. To lead, one has to be a good follower. There's common training and unit cohesion, trust and integrity are really some of the hallmarks that make the military what it is and what we understand today. Then you study. Maybe you're on a VA, a benefit or some sort of scholarship, but you study, you graduate, then what? Industry is a little different. It's very business focused. I'm sure JR and others there in the audience can help you with that understanding a little bit. Managers are more or less developed or hired rather than grown leaders via the military. It's very project and client centric versus a mission focus. The teams that are put together are based on need, and they, in today's working environment, are many times virtual, and they come together with expertise from across the companies, big or small. And the organizational culture, meaning what a company believes and values, really become the defining commonality aspect of business, if you will. So I guess that's the thought I want to leave you with on this slide is that SAME can be that unifying body between a military culture, as shown on the left, and an industry or business culture, as shown on the right. And you'll find people of all walks, including many uniformed members throughout the society. And that's another reason why I would promote your interest. And I think you'll find with involvement that you'll get great benefit from being a member and contributing as a member as well. So let me pause there and see if there's any reactions, Mike, see if people have questions or would like to dig a little deeper.
No questions from the audience here in person. And let me check to see if we have anything on the Zoom.
Yeah, I don't know if there's
On the Zoom.
comments. Okay, well, I'll just press on then. Go on to the next slide if you would. So focused on studying, graduating, and employment, I wanted to offer a few thoughts for the students primarily about how to approach, the coming phase of your lives. These are elements that I have found, or values that I have found, traits that become defining in terms of making really good decisions. The first really is a personal effort, and that means know your purpose. From a professional perspective, know what you're about. You should have a clear idea as you progress through your education, and then really lock in on what it is that you want to do. So let me operationalize that a little bit. As I was completing my military service back in 1999, preparing for retirement, I realized that the kind of things that the Air Force engineers did in those days were not as sustainable or resilient as they really needed to be. So I decided that, the next phase, the next career I would have a purpose that is very much focused on building sustainable outcomes and understanding how to manage risk through resiliency expertise. So that's where that became my purpose. And it's been my purpose for the last 25 years or so. The next element that I'd offer is that one of passion, and it's sort of difficult for a lot of engineers or would-be engineers or planners to understand what I mean there, but it's really about a professional passion. It's that purpose that gives you enjoyment is another way to think about it. And one that also sparks your interest and drives your curiosity. So engineers, in essence, surveyors, geomatics, a lot of you are in that program there. It's about getting things done, but also sparking your interest in new and better, innovative ways to do things. And if that, runs home for you, if it rings home, then your best day is going to be one that combines your purpose and what you're passionate about. And you'll find that the days, just go by, very, very quickly. You're totally engaged in what you're doing. And people see that. They see the purpose that you have, your interest and your passion around it, and your productivity, is never in question. You're always, out there on the A team, doing great things. The last P I'd like to leave you with there is people. I think all of you can relate to the fact that in our society today and elsewhere, there's people we want to be around and there's people we would prefer not to be around. And, hopefully you will come to a position where you have a choice, where you can choose the people that you want to associate with, that you want to work with, that you want to be a member of this great society with, if you would. But as you go for the employment side, make sure you understand the culture of the organization you're looking at. Understand it from a people perspective. What are those people about? What do they believe in? What do they value? Do they listen? Do they ask good questions? Are they innovative? And then make sure it's an organization that you admire and you would want to be part of, but also who respect you and understand what you can add to their efforts. So just a little bit of guidance there in terms of a mentoring moment, if you would. Think about those three things as you move forward in your careers. And I think you'll find those to be very rewarding at the end of the day, and help you make good decisions. So let's go to the next slide, Mike. So as an add to my original thinking, Mike and JR asked me to maybe talk about a couple projects. And there's three here on this slide. These links are hot and active, and hopefully, the file will be shared with anyone who wants it. And so you can dig into this a whole lot further. So Mike, I'm going to guide you on the first link there. If you would pull that link up. And what you're looking at is the Tyndall Air Force Base Installation Facility Standards. So this was a program that I ran on behalf of the Air Force as a member of CH2M Hill initially, and then Jacobs. And the website will give you a really deep understanding of what this installation of the future is all about, how it was built, some of the innovation that's behind it, some of the policy changes that we implemented, what the performance standards should be for the base. So typically you don't hear too much about those sort of things if you're an engineer. Pause on that one right there, if you would, Mike. So resiliency, sustainability, and smart. So these are the three keywords I wanted to share the most with the students here. Those were things that weren't present in the Unified Facility Code or a lot of the service policies of the past, but they are today. You'll see the Air Force moving very quickly into projects that are defined by these three elements. The resiliency is simply, about understanding your risks and then building to address those risks and operating to address those risks as well. The sustainability is very much a matter of standards, but it's also about performance in terms of what a organizational investment might be, whether it be buildings or infrastructure or even planning. And then SMART is really also an acronym, if you will, for building for tomorrow's technical and information technology capabilities. But it's also very much tied to the cyber wars today in terms of how military installations are hardened, if you will, and protected against indirect attack. Let's keep scrolling down there a little bit, if you would, Mike. So the design intent, the architectural image and character, for those of you that are interested in all that, there's just a tremendous amount of useful guidance in any of this. If you're into projects, you can click on these learn more links and you'll find a whole lot more about it. There's an area that I wanted to complete a highlight here. Up on the top of this slide, you'll see the landscape master plan and GIS maps. Those headers there, Mike, hit on those and you'll see here a number of different useful links, especially for those of you that are doing geomatics. If you go to the left column to B05 coastal zone. Now here you'll see, and just pause it there, a tremendous amount of information that talks to both sustainability and resiliency. And all of it was a function of a data-enabled GIS mapping effort that laid into it a lot of surge and flood zone protection data, as well as building environment data. But I just wanted to highlight this for students. It might be an area that would be of particular interest to the geomatics students, Mike, and you can refer back to this to see how the different interactive maps shows over time how sea level rise, both on the Gulf side and the Bay side, will affect that landmass, and why the policies were rewritten to consolidate the footprint, establish design flood elevations for the next 50 years, and then build within those flood design elevations so that the installation really would be representative of the future and more hardened against future storms. But there's a tremendous amount of information on this site. The same goes, if you would, you can jump out of this one to both the Olympics and Masdar. So the Olympics was a 2012 project. That's the one on the bottom. And this is a wiki link to a lot of the archived information that was done here. So my engagement was as a member of CH Film Hill and the program manager for this $9 billion investment was to help the City of London make really good, sustainable decisions on what venues they would build in a permanent way and which ones would be temporary. So the permanent ones were decided to have lasting value in terms of a post-Olympic business case outcome. I'll give you an example of what one of those was. So the main stadium was duplicative to Wembley. And there really wasn't a major football, soccer, team in American language need for an 80,000 seat stadium. But the West Ham Football Club, which was in the vicinity of the Olympic Park, did need a stadium, but their draw was only about 40,000, fans. So the stadium was built with a 40,000 seat overlay, which came off the stadium at the end of the games and was shipped to Brazil for the next set of Olympics. And that same stadium design was replicated and site adapted for Brazil. All of which proved to the London Organizing Committee that there were unique, innovative ways to address sustainability and not leave kind of white elephant, useless investments after the games. We're going to jump out of that one and go to Masdar. So following Masdar, following the Olympic opportunity, we had a program management task to establish the design intent and planning for what is now known as Masdar City. This work started in 2008 and continues today. It's a about a $4 or $5 billion city in the vicinity of Abu Dhabi, designed to be an innovation and technology laboratory, with investments to develop new technology, pause right there, for all types of future cities. What you see in this frame is a group rapid transit. There's also personal rapid transit, which were electrified driverless vehicles operating in the undercroft of the city and above on the main level of the city to move people around instead of gasoline powered vehicles. So our team did all of the work to create that technical capability, design the cars, manufacture the cars, employ them in the undercroft in a safe and smart way. And it was the first real autonomous, if you will, vehicle operation in the world, to my knowledge. So a bunch of other advanced technologies in terms of innovation you can find if you explore this site as well. I had the great opportunity to be one of the mentors for students. The Massachusetts Institute of Technology partnered with the Abu Dhabi Future Energy Company, which is the sponsor of Masdar, to create what is now known as MIST, or the Masdar Institute of Science and Technology. So as part of our assignment, all of the professionals also signed up in our program. There's about 300 people in this program team to be counselors and guidance mentors for the master's degree students that were the first wave of students in faculty at Masdar. So it was a lot of fun to work with those grad students on their thesis projects and help them develop some capabilities, all under the sponsorship of MIT. Very unique in that regard. So questions on any of this stuff? Hopefully there's a little bit more interest. Don't be bashful.
Just to comment that it was pretty interesting from the audience. No questions so far. I did want to ask you about the passion on some of these projects. Where were you able to find your passion?
It's all in innovation. Mike, it was, okay, well, our assignment after, I'll just go from the top to the bottom. Our assignment after Hurricane Michael pretty much destroyed Tyndall Air Force Base. 90% of the buildings were destroyed or uninhabitable. Was okay, you don't really want to build it back the way it was. That's not going to be the solution. So what does an installation of the future look like, and how do you define it? So that was what drove me there, was, well, where do you start? How do you do something different from the past? You start with standards and policy. So a lot of our early work in that program was guiding the Air Force on how to establish new standards and what policies needed to change to allow that to happen. And that's where, being a former officer and involved in that career field in the Air Force, I had still a lot of contacts, of course, and there was a tremendous amount of interest in supporting what we were advocating as a company that the Air Force do. And the same goes with the Olympics and Masdar. These were big challenges, multi-billion-dollar programs, one of a kind, unique opportunities to really shape the future in a positive way. And that's pretty much where the passion was found for me.
Hey, John, I'd like to say something if I could interrupt for a sec.
Sure.
Hey, so Steve Price here. I'm one of the board members of the San Francisco Post, and I just thought it was a coincidence, or not so much of a coincidence, that you mentioned Tyndall Air Force Base, because I work for Siemens on my full-time job, part-time engineer officer, longtime SAME member. But we did the building management systems and the gunshot detection and everything there at Tyndall. And so really a great example to showcase the installation of the future. Some of the technology out there is, state of the art, state of the science, and we're looking to replicate that in other installations across the country. But just pretty thrilled that you brought this up and showcase Tyndall, because it's a great resiliency installation. After the hurricane hit and damaged all those buildings, being able to bring it back online to a more resilient and kind of that type of infrastructure being in place now is a great example. So really enjoyed your presentation there.
Yeah, well, and hats off to your company. I mean, the Siemens guys showed up pretty early on when they heard that we were talking about smart, and they felt like they had something to offer in that regard in terms of how the communication system would be would actually be completely newly built, and how to make it resilient and redundant, but also capable in terms of what the new buildings, almost $4 billion worth of buildings needed to have in terms of control systems, security, communications, cyber, all of it. So they were very great partners in helping us understand, the kind of things that Siemens is known for, and helping us actually define some of those standards as well.
Yeah, definitely. And we know sometimes it's tough to work, with cutting edge technology with DoD, because there's a lot of red tape that you have to get through. But I think Tyndall was a place where we're able to, cut through that tape pretty quickly, efficiently, working closely with partners and our government teams. And yeah, it was a great project that we're talking about in various conferences, and happy to do so in the future. So yeah, really cool project and program that took place there.
Well, let me add an additional thought there, Steve. And it was, I think, to a large degree, a function of SAME being the opportunity for the companies involved. C.H. Hill Jacobs was essentially running the program as the program manager for the Air Force. But we had a whole slew of other partners that, and of course the Corps of Engineers that we worked with, but the unifying trust was really found across the society. All these companies were sustaining members. The Corps was very involved in SAME. The Panama City Post, which was 90% Air Force, was very much involved in SAME. And of course, the respondent and the client, if you will, for the base reconstruction program. And it was just the trust that operated across all those entities, founded along a common purpose, and a lot of of relationship duration over the years that allowed that trust to change policies, to change standards, to work together, to all the companies to come together around, okay, you do this best, so that's yours. You do this best, so that's yours, and create value for the Air Force and the Corps in the process. And this is just one of those beautiful things that I wanted to share about SAME in terms of a professional outcome, and what it really, since its founding, was intended to be able to do.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it does highlight the importance of the society, where you're able to have these opportunities and the cross-section between government and industry to talk about opportunities, and we're able to provide such an important solution to our nation's most challenging problems. So it does highlight the benefits of being a member of the society.
Yep. If I'll move along here, then we can go to some fielder's choice questions. So next slide, if you would, Mike. So this was another thing that I've learned over the years, and I'd like to somehow take a little credit for what you see here, but the real credit goes to my mentor, Major General Bud Ahern, who is no longer with us, but who's also the vice chairman of CH2M Hill when he retired. But Bud was one that championed the notion of credentials as the key to your success. And how you bring yourself to industry matters in terms of how they see your qualifications, whether you take the time to get registered, get licensed, or however you your particular discipline approaches professionalism. I just wanted to bring this point forward for the students that this matters, and it may not matter a whole lot to you right now, and you may not have your eyes on this target, but you need to. If you can define yourself as a professional with the appropriate license or certifications and registrations for what you claim you can do, that will matter hugely in your career going forward. So don't overlook this. Take the qualifying test, do the experience, get some part-time work and maybe internships with different companies so you really get a good sense of what you're doing, and then go for the credential. JR, I saw your heart on that one. You want to add any comments?
No, I was just what you're saying is really good for them to hear.
Okay. All right, so next one was really part of our planning here was go about 30 minutes and then throw some things up on the chart that might spark some interest and get into a little discussion. So these are some of the things that, I thought you might have questions about, or I could, enlighten you a bit on. So whoever would like to throw something out, have at it.
You guys want to talk about any of these things or have questions about them? Or... So I know for our program, internships are almost a requirement for the geomatics. So every summer we're all attempting to get internships that give us a good variety of skills that we can graduate with so that we're productive once we get into the field. So I think that's something that they do really well here at Fresno State.
Oh, that's great. I'll tell you how I got involved in. So my degree is in architecture, and I've got a engineering degree from Georgia Tech. But I started in high school on a survey team, holding the rods in the swamp at what is now Disney World. And I learned what surveying was about and how to do it way back before total station existed, and surveys and transits and field rods were the norm.
I love that. That's awesome.
What's it like measuring in chains with chains?
We had a question from the audience, what it's like to measure in chains.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, we had transits, so you could get a pretty good idea of, it wasn't meets and bounds, but you could get a pretty good idea where elevations changed and distances were, but it still had to be paced off.
Work-life balance that I'm noticing trend along the Generation Z, now that they're coming into the workforce, that they're demanding a better work-life balance than my generation, Generation X, ever had or expected. Have you noticed that trend in your industry as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think any company that doesn't recognize that today is probably in some serious trouble. So if you think about these engineering companies, any kind of technology company, you're only as good as your people. So it's professional services, and professional services work best when there's a good balance between demands. I've seen organizations, the military included, where, you know, the work side of the equation just got totally out of whack and bad things happen. People get sick, they don't exercise, their health goes, you know, in the wrong direction. Marriages break up, partnerships break up, and the demands just, you know, in the end, end up as a loss. So to me, from an observational perspective, and mostly for, you know, the second career in the private sector for me, I worked hard to make sure that I was around for ball games, available for our family. Now I'm, you know, only working part-time because I want to be available for my grandkids, and there's a slew of those. I just got back from, you know, 7 days with them, doing everything from, you know, soccer practice to piano lessons. So I think it's really a key part of your performance as well. When you're rested and refreshed and you take time to be with those who need you and love you, more so than any employer will ever be, you know, you can perform better. So, you know, don't be bashful about stating what you need. Your employers will respond. And if they don't, you don't want to be with that company.
Excellent. We have a comment and a question from the chat. The comment is from Erica Powell saying, yes, it's good to develop those work-life balance habits early in your career. And it only gets worse as your career grows. Happy team members make happy contributors to the mission of the organizations that we work for. And then Xenia
Yeah.
had a question. It says, in your experience, would you go for a federal state job or a private job? What do you think some of the pros and cons are of that?
Okay, well, that's a great question, and I'm glad someone asked it. So, having grown up in the military in the federal side, which was my choice. So ROTC and OTS was my pathway into the Air Force right at the end of Vietnam. So my draft number of 7, and it was, you know, join the Army or stay in the ROTC for the Air Force. But I never regretted a day of that. To me, the motivations are a little bit different. My youngest son is a facilities director for a county in North Georgia. My oldest son is a engineer for a logistics company, building big boxes all over the world. So the nuts didn't fall too far from the tree on that side of things, but each for different walks. David is Lieutenant Colonel in the Reserves, Air Force Reserves, and Jay was a captain in the U.S. Marine Corps, served his ROTC scholarship 4 years. The values and the missions and the focus are going to be different for each one. So at the federal level, it's going to be around the needs of our country, whether it be military or civilian. I mean, you've got all kinds of opportunities there, FAA, EPA, you name it, it's out there. The state and the municipal are similar. The pay structures are different as well. The private side is going to be your highest income opportunity to start. And if you continue to perform, it'll probably be your highest for a long term. But there are other trade-offs from the standpoint of work-life balance, as we just discussed. The demands on the private side have to be managed. The federal, state, municipal, they they have as part of their culture a better understanding of what's work and what's not work. Whether that turns out to be a life balance or not is another question, because you see a lot of state municipal people moonlight or have second jobs because their income levels require that. So it just depends on what you want to do. I would not discourage any of those end markets, whether it be federal, state, municipal, or private. It really kind of comes down to how much job security you want. The federal and state level are going to be pretty secure jobs. I mean, you have to kind of mess up pretty bad to get fired. Municipal tends to be a little bit more political. There's a lot of, back rubbing, if you will, that happens in that market. In the private, in almost all cases, for good firms, it's a matter of performance. So if you're a person that is self-confident, you know what you're doing, you do it well, and you perform, you work hard, you're going to find more compensation and more opportunity in the private sector. Can't comment a whole lot on the nonprofit. There's really not that many opportunities for engineers in the nonprofit sector, but it's out there.
That's a really great description that you put together of the different markets. That's I don't think anybody could ever do a better job.
Well, that's been my experience over time. I'm sure it changes. And, again, I don't want to disparage any of those markets. It really comes down to the person and how confident you are in your ability to perform and your risk tolerance, how much risk you're willing to take around your employment.
I have a question I want to ask, unless there's a question from anybody in the room. Okay.
Go ahead, Jay.
My question is, you've been an innovator, a massive innovator. I don't know how to describe really more of what is a better suiting word for what you've done in your career. You've been able to bring together systems. So we all live, for the students, we all live in an interconnected world. I don't know how much you realize that, but if, let's say, a dam fails, it can have impacts to the electric grid, right? It can have impacts to sewer, to water, to transportation. If a disaster happens, it's not just one thing that gets affected. And so to build an installation of the future, you got to think about a lot of different things, including managed retreat, which is something that across the United States is going to be happening as a response to sea level rise, like what Tyndall Air Force Base did. What were some of your biggest challenges that you've had to face, and how did you overcome them on any of the projects you've worked on?
Well, I'll tell you the biggest one, and it was in London on the Olympics program. So I don't know if anybody in the audience has been to that site or to those Olympic Games, but the main park was an intersection of 3 boroughs in East London. And they're very poor boroughs. They're sort of the place where immigrants from any colonialized nation that carried a U.S. passport would land. So it was maybe half English speaking and literally a lot of poverty and unemployment. And so the site itself was about 2 kilometers by 3 kilometers. And the urban character was about 2 to 3 stories of old, sometimes more than 120-year-old buildings. So brick, wood, iron, buildings, walk-ups for the most part 2 or 3 stories high. So just imagine narrow streets and that kind of mass that has to be demolished. To carry out our commitment to sustainability, we said, okay, well, where are you going to get a workforce to deconstruct that mass, that volumetric mass? 2 kilometers by 3 kilometers, largely 3 stories high, in a relatively short time frame. That labor force didn't exist at the time, but the people existed. So I walked the boroughs, West Ham, Stratford, a couple others, and went to the public houses to meet the immigrants, most of whom were on the dole. And honestly, I was many times the only white guy. And I talked with people and asked them, if we could train you with your hands to do deconstruction work, to help us salvage and inventory these materials, would you take a job for a living wage? And I found that of the thousands of people I talked with, most would. They just didn't have an opportunity. So I convinced LOCOG to allow us to deconstruct, reuse, recycle, reclaim, repurpose that volume of demolition materials. And we built a warehouse, an open yard warehouse on the site of clay bricks that had the mortar chipped off of them, wood and iron, windows and doors that could be resold, and all kinds of other building materials that could be crushed for our needs. And then we innovated around our contracts and required the principal contractors that were, most of these were design build jobs, that were going to be building these facilities to draw from that warehouse first. And what it did, it prevented the building of 17 new landfills, because that's what the volume was going to require. Not only the volume of waste, but the opportunity to reuse all those materials. But the biggest challenge was creating the workforce. So we got people relatively, substance abuse free. We had some tolerance there, but we taught them how to chip and deconstruct safely. We had supervisors that were skilled. We created training programs to teach them the new skills. We gave them clothes, helmets, safety gear, tools, and they deconstructed that mass. And then most of it, 80% of it by weight, was reused. So not only did we save all the greenhouse gas emissions from the lorries hauling this stuff all over the UK, but we created a workforce of over 5,000 people who were paid a living wage, acquired a skill, and then were able to raise themselves out of poverty and go elsewhere in the UK and do that same sort of work. That was the biggest challenge of my career, was how do you do that demolition, and where will the people come from?
That's an amazing story. That's pretty cool. Just curious, do you have any statistics on any of those folks that worked with that project after the fact?
Yeah, a lot fell back into old ways. I think we tracked for a while the employment opportunities, and about 70% or so of the workforce that we created moved on. Were able to have the resources to leave London to go elsewhere in the UK and in Europe, because they had UK passports, to where their work was.
That's awesome. That's a great story to hear. And I'm sure Erica Powell, who's on the call here, would appreciate that as well. She's our DEI for the post board. This has been really great. Mike, do you have any other further questions? That was a great answer. Thank you for that.
Sure.
No further questions, and in fact, we're getting into the class transition time. So I'd like to thank everybody for participating in today's meeting. Thank you for speaking to us and presenting to us. I'll ensure that the students are presented with the PowerPoint, the digital one, so the URLs will work and they'll be able to visit. Thank you, JR, for helping coordinate this and get this arranged and put together. Is there any other comments before we go ahead and conclude though?
I have one question.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'd like to get advice. I'm in ROTC right now for the Air Force studying mechanical engineering. I just like to see if there's any advice for someone in my situation looking to go into the military at this point.
Okay, Colonel, were you able to hear that question?
Yeah, sure. Stay with it. Do the best you can on your grades, and don't think twice about accepting a commission, but ask for assignment into the civil engineer career field. The mechanical engineers, a lot of them get snagged up to fly, and if you're flight eligible, you'll have a choice, but you can ask to not fly and do a career in civil engineering, which was my path. You may want to fly.
If you don't fly, what does that career path look like? Could you describe that a little bit?
Well, right now it's very really an attractive career field because the Air Force is struggling to recruit engineers. So the opportunity for leadership and project management and technical advancement is really great. You'll move really fast through the opportunity sets, and your ability to contribute to the needs of the Air Force are probably stronger now than they've been in the last 15, 20 years. That's largely because the services have, I wouldn't say downsized, but they have right-sized as a result of the exit from Iraq and Afghanistan, and kind of building up to go into the Pacific right now.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Welcome. And if you'd like to talk more about that, I'm happy to connect and share whatever advice I can.
Yeah, if that student individual wanted to get Colonel Mogge's email from Mike right there, I think that would, if you're okay with that, we could share that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why I'm here. I'm at your disposal. I'm trying to help you guys and gals.
Appreciate it. Thank you. And I'll make sure that you get
Yeah.
with that. Okay, excellent.
If I could, I just want to say a couple of thank yous. We have a couple of folks that have joined this call from the San Francisco board, Sam, Erica, Sergio, and Steve. So thank you. And I saw that Dr. Hyatt is also on the call. So thank you for making that. We really appreciate you making the time.
That's the key to a successful student chapter. The posts have got to show up and participate. And I've been involved with a number of those over the years, and the hats off to you guys for taking the time and showing the interest.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Well, we'll go ahead and conclude today. For those in the audience, the newsletter was sent out and it has a rail trip, site tour on March, and then we've got a date locked in for looking at the flight line at Naval Air Station Lemoore for the FA-18s. That'll be on April. So go ahead and check that, and then I'll send out a form for anybody who's interested in doing that flight line visit for us to fill out and get clearance on that. Other than that, this will conclude this meeting. Again, thank you everybody who's on the call, and we hope you all have a great day. Thank you.